The thunder cracked like a rifle shot across the Montana sky, splitting the night and hurling Elias straight into the path of my pickup's headlights. Rain lashed the windshield in sheets, turning the dirt road into a river of mud. But there he was, staggering from the tree-line, soaked to the bone, his eyes wild with something fiercer than the storm chasing him. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding not from the near miss, but from the raw desperation etched on his face, a stranger who looked like he'd been running from more than just the weather. I didn't think twice. Yanking the wheel, I swung the truck toward him, the tires spinning in the muck until they caught and lurched forward. "Get in!" I shouted over the roar, shoving the passenger door open against the gale. He collapsed into the seat, dripping water everywhere, his chest heaving like he'd sprinted a marathon. Up close, in the dim glow of the dashboard, he was younger than I'd guessed, maybe 25, with dark curls plastered to his forehead and a jaw set in defiance that cracked just enough to show the fear beneath. That was how Elias crashed into my life, on a night when the sky itself seemed bent on unraveling everything I'd pieced together after years of quiet isolation. My ranch, Bitterroot Haven, sprawled across the foothills of the Rockies, 100 acres of sagebrush and grazing land I'd inherited from my father and poured my sweat into after my wife, Clara, left me 5 years back. She cited the endless winters, the silence that stretched like the plains, but I knew it was the part of me she'd never touched, the questions I'd buried under fences and feed schedules. At 42, Henry Whitaker was a man of routines. Dawn patrols on horseback, mending wire under the relentless sun, evenings with a tumbler of bourbon and the crackle of the radio playing old country tunes. No room for storms, literal or otherwise. Elias mumbled a thanks as I gunned the engine back toward the house, the wipers slapping futilely against the downpour. "Name's Henry," I said, keeping my eyes on the blurred ribbon of road. "You got one." "Elias," he replied, voice rough, like gravel under boots. He shivered, wrapping his arms around himself, and I caught a glimpse of bruises blooming purple on his knuckles, fresh and angry. Not from the fall, those looked like the marks of a fight, the kind that leaves echoes in your bones. The cabin loomed ahead, a squat log structure with a wraparound porch I'd built myself, lights flickering through the rain like a beacon. I killed the engine and led him inside, the door banging shut behind us against the wind. The air inside was warm, thick with the scent of pine from the fire I'd banked earlier. "Dry off by the hearth," I told him, tossing a towel from the stack by the door. "I'll rustle up some coffee." "Black?" He nodded, peeling off his sodden jacket to reveal a thin t-shirt clinging to lean muscles, ribs faintly visible under the fabric. City boy, I thought, not built for this wild country. As he rubbed at his hair, water dripping onto the worn oak floorboards, I busied myself in the kitchen, the percolator hissing on the stove. My mind raced. Who was he? A drifter caught in the squall or something more? Montana had its share of wanderers, but none had ever washed up with eyes like his, stormy gray and holding secrets that tugged at something deep in my chest. Handing him the mug, steam curling between us, I settled into the armchair across from the fire. The flames danced shadows on the walls, lined with faded photos. Me and Clara at our wedding, all stiff smiles and rented tuxes. Dad on his last hunt, rifle slung over his shoulder. The ranch in summer bloom, golden under endless blue. Elias sipped slowly, gaze fixed on the hearth, the silence stretching until it hummed. "You from around here?" I asked finally, leaning forward, elbows on knees. He shook his head, curls falling back into place now that they were drying. "Seattle. Was passing through. Got turned around in the storm." His voice trailed, and he flexed his bruised hand, wincing. I didn't press. Not yet. The night wore on, the storm battering the windows like an insistent lover. I offered him the spare room upstairs, the one with the quilt Clara had sewn, colors faded but soft. He hesitated, then followed, pausing at the threshold. "Why are you doing this? Letting a stranger in like this?" I met his eyes, those grays pulling me in despite myself. Storms pass. People shouldn't have to ride them out alone. It was the truth or close enough. In the quiet of my days, loneliness had become a companion. But tonight, with him standing there vulnerable and alive, it stirred like embers under ash. Morning broke clear and sharp, the kind of Montana dawn that paints the world in gold and promises forgetting. I found Elias in the kitchen, staring out at the paddocks where my horses nickered softly, mist rising from their backs. He'd borrowed one of my old flannels, too big on his frame, sleeves rolled up to show forearms corded with faint scars, like he'd wrestled life and lost a few rounds. "Slept like the dead," he said, turning with a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thanks again, Henry. I should hit the road, find a motel in town." I poured coffee for us both, the routine grounding me. "Road's a mess after last night. Stay till it dries. Least I can do." And I meant it. There was something about him, a quiet intensity that mirrored my own unspoken aches. We talked then, halting at first, over eggs scrambled with whatever herbs I'd dried from the garden. He was a graphic designer, he'd say, freelancing after a bad breakup, chasing the open road to clear his head. Lies or half-truths, they hung in the air, but I let them be. In return, I shared snippets of ranch life. The way the wind whispers through the aspens at dusk, the ache of calving season when sleep is a luxury. By noon, he was out with me, mending a fence line blown down by the gale. His hands were quick, city-soft but willing, and as we worked side by side, sweat beading on our brows under the climbing sun, laughter slipped in unbidden. He teased my stubborn hammer swings. I ribbed his grip on the pliers. For the first time in years, the ranch felt less like a cage and more like a stage, alive with possibility. That evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the hills in fire, we sat on the porch with beers from the cooler. Elias leaned back, boots propped on the rail, and for a moment, the weight lifted from his shoulders. "This place, it's like another world," he murmured, gaze on the horizon where thunderheads still lingered, purple and distant. "It's home," I replied, voice low. Our eyes met, and in that gaze, something shifted, electric and unnamed. His hand brushed mine on the armrest, accidental or not, and heat bloomed in my veins, a reminder of desires I'd locked away since Clara walked out, since I'd admitted to myself in the dead of night that my heart leaned toward men, toward the strength and softness intertwined. He pulled back first, clearing his throat, but the air hummed with it, unspoken. Night fell gentle after that, stars wheeling overhead like scattered diamonds. I lay awake in my bed, listening to the creak of floorboards upstairs, wondering what storm he truly fled, and if sheltering him might unleash one of my own. Days blurred into a rhythm neither of us questioned. Elias stayed, helping with chores that bent my back and filled his hands with calluses. We'd rise with the roosters, saddle up for rides across the meadows, the horses' hooves thudding soft on springy turf. He'd sketch in a battered notebook during breaks, quick lines capturing the curve of a butte or the wild tangle of my hair after a gust. "You're photogenic," he'd say with that crooked grin, and I'd flush, muttering about dust and sweat. Evenings were for stories by the fire, bourbon loosening tongues. He spoke of Seattle's relentless rain, neon nights in dive bars where dreams drowned in cheap whiskey, a lover named Theo, charismatic and cruel, who promised forever then vanished with half his savings and all his trust. He said I was too much, too needy, Elias confessed one night, flames reflecting in his eyes like tears held back. Like love was a burden I invented. I nodded, staring into my glass. Clara said the ranch swallowed me whole, that I loved the land more than her. Truth was, I'd never let her see the man beneath, the one who watched ranch hands with a hunger he mistook for envy. Coming out to myself had been a solitary unraveling, no parades, just miles of empty trail and the echo of my own doubts. His hand found my knee then, tentative, warm through denim. "You're not swallowed, Henry. You're the storm here, steady and deep." Our lips met in the firelight, tentative at first, then fierce, years of restraint igniting like dry tinder. His mouth tasted of bourbon and salt, body pressing close, all lean lines and urgent need. We moved to my room, clothes shedding like old skin, exploring in the tangle of sheets, whispers turning to gasps under the quilt's weight. It was more than release. It was revelation. In his arms, I found the pieces of myself I'd fenced off, the tenderness I'd reserved for sunsets and strays. He traced the scars on my chest from a long-ago bull ride, murmuring praises that made me believe them. Dawn found us entwined, his head on my shoulder, breath syncing with mine like we'd always fit. But storms don't vanish with the sun. A week in, a call came on the landline, crackling from afar. Elias's face drained of color as he listened, then hung up abrupt, eyes darting like a cornered colt. "Old friend," he lied, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. I didn't push, not then, but doubt seeded, a quiet rot beneath the bloom. We pushed on, love deepening in stolen moments. A kiss in the hayloft, dust motes dancing around us. Slow dances in the kitchen to radio crooners, his laughter vibrating against my chest. He opened up in fragments, about foster homes in his teens, the ache of never belonging until art gave him shape. I shared the ranch's ghosts, Dad's stern lessons on manhood that left no room for softness. For this. Yet shadows lengthened. He'd vanish on walks, returning with phone in hand, screen dark but fingers tense. One night, after lovemaking that left us breathless and bare, he traced my jaw and whispered, "What if I can't stay?" The question hung, a fracture in our fragile world. I pulled him closer, heart clenching. Then we faced the wind together. But deep down, I knew ranches teach you storms come unbidden, and some carry lightning that scars. The first real crack came under a harvest moon, full and bloated, casting silver over the corrals. We'd spent the day branding strays, sweat-soaked and triumphant, celebrating with a bonfire in the lower pasture. Flames roared high, sparks ascending like prayers, and Elias leaned into me, head on my shoulder, the world reduced to us and the crackle of wood. That's when the truck lights pierced the dark, rumbling up the drive unannounced. A beat-up Ford, dust-caked, with two men spilling out, silhouettes broad and menacing. Elias stiffened, going rigid in my arms. "Henry," he breathed, voice athread. "That's..." Before he could finish, the taller one, buzz-cut and built like a linebacker, bellowed, "Elias, you slimy fuck, we found you." The other, wiry with a snake tattoo curling up his neck, spat tobacco and advanced, eyes gleaming feral in the firelight. I stood, placing myself between them, pulse thundering. "This is private land. State your business or get off it." My voice held steady, honed from years of facing down coyotes and creditors, but inside, fear coiled tight. Elias gripped my arm, nails digging crescents. "They're from Theo's crew. He sent them. I took something that wasn't mine when I left." His confession tumbled out, raw and ragged. Not just savings, but files, designs he created for Theo's shady graphic firm, intellectual property laced with evidence of fraud. Elias had bolted with a USB drive, leverage against the betrayal, but now it painted a target on his back. The buzzcut man laughed, low and ugly. "Hand it over, pretty boy, or we drag you back to Seattle in pieces." Snakeneck lunged, but I shoved him hard, the impact jarring my shoulder. Chaos erupted, fists flying in the fire's glow. I took a boot to the ribs, breath exploding, but landed a haymaker on Buzzcut's jaw, splitting my knuckles anew. Elias fought like a demon, elbow cracking Snakeneck's nose with a wet crunch, but numbers won. They pinned him, wrenching his arms, and in the scuffle, the USB slipped from his pocket, glinting in the dirt. "No," he gasped, straining, eyes locking on mine with a plea that shattered something vital. I charged again, tackling the wiry one, rolling in the grit until stars burst behind my lids from a ringed fist. Distant, I heard the crack of bone, Elias's cry cut short. Then sirens wailed, faint but rising, neighbors roused by the ruckus. The men cursed, bolting for their truck, tires spinning mud as they fled into the night. We lay there, battered and bleeding, the fire dying to embers. Elias crawled to me, tears carving tracks through the grime on his face. "I'm sorry, Henry. I never meant." His words broke, sobs racking him as I pulled him close, ignoring the fire in my side. "It's over," I murmured, though doubt gnawed. Was it? The drive was gone, trampled in the fray, but the damage lingered, trust fracturing like the dry earth underfoot. Sheriff Harlan arrived minutes later, lights pulsing blue, his deputy checking pulses and calling for medics. Elias spun a tale of road rage, strangers mistaking him for someone else, and I backed it, loyalty overriding questions. Harlan, a grizzled vet with eyes that saw too much, clapped my shoulder. You all right, Whit? Looks like you tangled with a grizzly. I managed to nod, watching as Elias was loaded into the ambulance, his hands squeezing mine fierce before the doors shut. Alone then, under the moon's indifferent gaze, I sifted the dirt for the USB, fingers closing on its slim form, miraculously intact. Secrets, it seemed, were harder to bury than bones. Recovery was a slow burn, days in the county clinic smelling of antiseptic and regret. Bruises bloomed technicolor on my torso, ribs taped tight, but the real ache was deeper, a hollow where certainty had been. Elias hovered, guilt etching lines around his mouth, fetching water and avoiding my gaze. You saved me, he'd say, voice thick, but I waved it off, the words tasting like ash. Back at the ranch, tension simmered beneath the surface calm. Chores resumed, but silences stretched longer, filled with unasked whys. One afternoon, as thunderheads gathered anew, I cornered him in the barn. Hay scent heavy, horses stamping unease. Tell me everything, Elias. No more shadows. He leaned against a stall, arms crossed, eyes downcast. The story poured out. Theo, not just a lover but a manipulator, running a Ponzi scheme through fake design contracts. Elias, idealistic and in love, had uncovered the ledgers, copied them to the drive as proof. Leaving had been survival, but running meant isolation, until the storm led him here. I thought I'd lost it in the wreck, he admitted, voice cracking. Coming to you, it was chance, but staying? That was choice. You made me want to be whole again. I stepped closer, the air charged, his scent of earth and soap pulling me in. And now, those men will be back. Fear flickered, but so did fire, the bond we'd forged in firelight unyielding. He cupped my face, thumbs brushing stubble. Then we fight, together. Our kiss was desperate, reaffirming, bodies pressing urgent against the rough wood. But as passion ebbed, reality intruded. A knock at the cabin door, insistent and official. FBI agent Reyes, sharp-suited and no-nonsense, stood on the porch, badge glinting. Mr. Whitaker, we're looking into a fraud ring out of Seattle. Your guest matches a description. Elias paled beside me, but I handed over the drive, calm as a still pond. Found this after the fight. Figured it was trouble. Reyes's eyes narrowed, then softened fractionally. Brave move. This could crack the case. She took the evidence, promising protection, witness statements. As her car crunched away, Elias turned to me, awe and terror mingling. You just gave it away. For me. I pulled him inside, door shutting on the gathering dusk. For us. That night, lovemaking was tender, exploratory, mapping hurts and hopes in the dim lamplight. Yet sleep evaded, my mind churning. Betrayal's echo not from him, but from the life I'd half-lived, now demanding full reckoning. Weeks passed in watchful limbo. Elias worked the ranch with renewed vigor, sketching logos for local co-ops, his talent blooming in the wide-open spaces. We built routines laced with intimacy. Shared baths in the clawfoot tub, steam fogging mirrors. Midnight confessions under starlit skies, vulnerabilities bared like offerings. But the past clawed back. Letters arrived, anonymous and venomous, postmarked Seattle. Traitor, we'll bury you both. Elias withdrew, nightmares jerking him awake, sweat slick and murmuring apologies. I held him through it, whispering assurances, but doubt crept. Was love enough against the tide? The breaking point came on a crisp autumn eve, leaves turning crimson like spilled blood. I'd ridden out to check the upper fence, wind whipping sharp. When I returned to find the cabin dark, Elias's truck gone. Panic surged, heart slamming as I tore through rooms, finding only a note on the kitchen table. I'm sorry, Henry. Can't drag you under. The drive was a lie, I kept copies. They're coming for me, not you. Live free. Love E. Betrayal hit like a gut punch, sharper than any fist. He'd played me, or worse, spared me in his twisted mercy, leaving shreds of our world in his wake. Rage boiled, then grief, crashing over me in waves. I sank to the floor, note crumpling in my fist, the ranch's silence mocking my solitude. Days blurred into numb routine, chores mechanical, smiles for the hands forced. Harlan stopped by, concern furrowing his brow. Heard your boys skip town. You holding up? I nodded lies, bourbon my confessor each night, toasting to fools and storms. Then, on the full moon's return, headlights cut the dark once more. Not foes, but Elias, disheveled and desperate, truck idling as he bolted from it. Henry! His cry shattered the quiet, arms enveloping me before words could form. I couldn't. Drove to Billings, turned back. The copies. I burned them, told Reyes everything. It's over if you'll have me. Crisis peaked in sobs and accusations, my fists pounding his chest harmlessly, releasing the storm I'd bottled. You left me, I choked, voice breaking, like everyone does. He held tighter, tears wetting my shirt. Not leaving again. You sheltered me, Henry. Now let me build with you. We collapsed on the porch, unraveling pains in the cold air, truths forging stronger than before. Healing unfolded slow, like spring thaw. Elias testified via video, the ring crumbling under federal weight, Theo's empire dust. We mended fences literal and figurative. Therapy sessions in town, his sketches turning to our shared dreams. A guest cabin for artists fleeing their storms, a haven like the one I'd given him. Winter blanketed the ranch in white, isolating yet intimate. We'd curl by the fire, bodies entwined, futures whispered in the glow. Betrayal's scar remained, a reminder of fragility. But love, we'd learned, was the ultimate mending. One dawn, as snow hushed the world, Elias traced my palm with his. Marry me, Henry. Not for show but for us. Here, where storms break but don't define. I kissed him, yes, blooming unspoken. The ranch, once my refuge, became our testament. That sheltering another could weather any gale, emerging not unbroken, but beautifully scarred. In the end, we stood on the porch, rings simple silver on calloused fingers, watching the horizon where new light chased old shadows. Love, human and flawed, was the true horizon, endless and ours.